On a cold, desolate winter night, as a relentless snowstorm clawed at the sleepy town of Hallowford, Sarah found herself alone in her aging two-story home. The house, nestled on the outskirts of town, was a relic of the past, its wooden structure groaning under the weight of snow and time. Sarah, a woman of grace and solitude, with her chestnut hair often tied back in a practical bun, had always found comfort in the isolation of her home. But that night, as the wind howled like a chorus of lost souls and the snow blanketed the world in a suffocating white shroud, a sense of unease began to creep into her heart. The first sign of something amiss was the knocking, a slow, deliberate sound that echoed through the empty corridors of the house. Sarah, initially dismissing it as a trick of the wind, soon realized the knocking was too rhythmic, too intentional to be a mere play of the elements. With each knock, a spike of fear lanced through her, sharp and cold. She approached the door with trepidation, her heart pounding in her chest. The world outside her window was a blur of white and gray, the snowstorm turning everything beyond her doorstep into an indistinguishable maelstrom. As she peered through the peephole, her breath caught in her throat. There, amidst the fury of the storm, stood a figure so bizarre and out of place it seemed like a figment of a fevered imagination. A clown, its makeup smeared and running, its once vibrant costume now a tattered array of colors, stood on her doorstep, its eyes fixed on the door. Sarah recoiled in horror, her mind struggling to comprehend the surreal nightmare that unfolded before her. The clown, with its twisted smile and hollow eyes, seemed to emanate a malevolence that transcended the physical barrier of the door. The knocking continued, each thud a sinister echo in the silence of the house. Sarah, paralyzed by fear, could only watch as the clown began to circle the house, its movements deliberate, as if savoring the terror it instilled. The house, once a sanctuary, became a prison. The storm outside raged on, the wind screaming in tandem with her mounting dread. The isolation of her home, once a blessing, now felt like a curse, leaving her vulnerable and exposed. As the night progressed, the sounds around the house grew more unsettling. Scratching at the windows, soft thuds on the roof, laughter that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The clown was toying with her, its presence an oppressive force that weighed on her psyche. Sarah's mind began to fray at the edges, the isolation and fear melding into a tapestry of madness. The boundaries between reality and nightmare blurred, the clown's ghastly visage appearing in every shadow, every reflection. In a moment of desperation, Sarah decided to confront the intruder. Armed with nothing but a kitchen knife and a faltering courage, she opened the door to the blizzard. The snow, a cold, biting swarm, engulfed her, but the clown was nowhere to be seen. The realization that she was not safe, either inside or outside her home, was a chilling epiphany. The clown, a specter of her deepest fears, had become a manifestation of the isolation and terror that consumed her. As the night reached its darkest hour, the storm outside intensified. Sarah, trapped in her own home, succumbed to a state of delirium. Her thoughts were chaotic, a whirlwind of fear and despair. In the climactic moments of her ordeal, the house, groaning under the strain of the storm, began to feel as if it were collapsing in on itself. The clown, now a constant presence in her fractured mind, seemed to be everywhere, its laughter a cacophony that drowned out all other sounds. In the final harrowing scene, as the storm reached its peak, the house itself seemed to buckle and twist, the boundaries of reality torn asunder. Sarah, lost in her madness, saw the clown emerge from the shadows, its form towering over her, a nightmarish entity born from the heart of her terror. The house, once a symbol of safety and solitude, now stood as a tomb, a monument to the horrors that can be unleashed when the mind is pushed beyond the brink of sanity. As the storm eventually subsided, leaving the town of Hallowford in a serene, snowy embrace, the house on the outskirts remained silent, its secrets buried within its walls. Sarah was never seen again, her fate a mystery that would haunt the town for years to come. The house, a stark silhouette against the pale dawnlight, stood as a chilling reminder of the night when a snowstorm brought with it a visitor of unimaginable horror. In the forgotten corridors of the Aldridge Mansion, nestled in a quaint, yet eerily isolated town, a discovery was made that would unravel the very fabric of reality for its inhabitants. The house, a decrepit structure with its once majestic facade now succumbing to the relentless wear of time, held within its bones a legacy of untold stories and long-buried secrets. It was in the attic, a place shrouded in cobwebs and dust, where Jonathan, the newest owner of the Aldridge estate, stumbled upon an object that seemed almost out of place amidst the antiquated trunks and faded photographs. It was a music box, not just any music box, but one that bore the unsettling image of a clown-like Jester, its features twisted into a grotesque semblance of joy and madness. The paint, chipped and faded, hinted at a once vibrant palette, now lost to the ages. The music box, though unassuming in its closed form, harbored a darkness that Jonathan could not have anticipated. Each night, as the house settled into an uneasy silence, the box would begin to play. Its melody, haunting and discordant, seemed to seep into the very walls of the mansion, resonating with a ghostly echo that chilled the bones. With each note an apparition emerged, a spectral clown, garbed in tattered remnants of what once might have been a flamboyant costume. Its face, pallid and distorted, bore an expression of sorrow so profound it was almost tangible. The ghostly clown would then perform, its movements erratic and unnerving, reenacting a tragedy long forgotten by the living, the tragic fire that had claimed lives in a local theater decades ago. As Jonathan delved deeper into the mystery, his once rational mind began to fray at the edges. The isolation of the mansion, coupled with the nightly visitations, started to erode his grasp on reality. He would spend hours watching the specter, a mix of horror and fascination gripping him as he tried to unravel the meaning behind its performance. The house itself seemed to feed on the music box's eerie tune, its hallways stretching longer, its shadows deepening as if morphing into a labyrinthine entity intent on ensnaring its inhabitants. The air grew thick with the scent of charred wood and smoke, a sensory echo of the fire that had once consumed flesh and bone. As the days blurred into nights, Jonathan's obsession with the Jester's box grew. He began to see the faces of the theater's victims in the shadows, their eyes hollow, their mouths agape in silent screams. The mansion, once a place of refuge, had become a prison of madness and despair. In a desperate attempt to end the nightly hauntings, Jonathan decided to destroy the music box. But as he raised the hammer, the Jester's apparition appeared, its eyes blazing with a malevolent light. The air crackled with a palpable energy, and the walls of the mansion groaned as if in pain. With a swift, unnerving grace, the ghostly clown lunged at Jonathan, its form dissolving into a swirl of spectral mist, enveloping him in a cold embrace. The music box's melody reached a frenzied crescendo, filling the attic with a sound that was both beautiful and horrifying. In the morning, the house stood silent. The music box lay shattered on the floor, its pieces strewn about like the remnants of a forgotten nightmare. But Jonathan was nowhere to be found. The mansion, once again, returned to its somber solitude, its secrets buried within its walls. The townsfolk would whisper about the Aldridge mansion, about the man who vanished without a trace, and about the haunting melody that sometimes drifted on the wind during the stillness of the night. The music box, though destroyed, left a legacy of horror and madness, a reminder of the thin veil that separates the living from the realms of the supernatural. And in the attic, amidst the silence and the dust, the faint echo of a ghastly serenade lingered, a dark and gruesome testament to the Jester's box and its unearthly occupant. In the quaint, shadow-draped town of Willow's End, a story of chilling terror began to unfold within the walls of an old Victorian house, passed down through generations. The house, with its peeling paint and creaking floorboards, stood as a silent witness to the passage of time, its secrets hidden behind a facade of normalcy. It was in this house that young Ethan, a boy of only 10, inherited an item from his late grandmother, an antique mirror, ornate and enigmatic, its frame adorned with intricate carvings that seemed to dance in the flickering light. The mirror, once a prized possession of his grandmother, now hung in Ethan's room, reflecting a world that seemed familiar, yet subtly distorted. Ethan's initial fascination with the mirror soon turned to unease. In its depths, he began to see a figure, a sinister clown with a grotesque smile and hollow eyes that seemed to pierce into his very soul. The clown, garbed in tattered, multicolored rags, mimicked Ethan's every move with a precision that was both uncanny and terrifying. As days turned into weeks, the clown began to communicate with Ethan. Its voice, a guttural whisper that seemed to come from the mirror itself, enticed him with promises of a world beyond his wildest imaginations, a dark, twisted realm that lay within the mirror. Ethan, both intrigued and frightened, found himself drawn into a dangerous game. The clown's presence began to dominate his thoughts, its influence seeping into his dreams, turning them into nightmares filled with distorted laughter and shadowy corridors. The house, once a place of comfort, began to reflect the mirror's malevolence. Shadows lengthened, the air grew colder, and the silence was often punctuated by the soft, sinister whisper of the clown, beckoning Ethan closer to the mirror. Ethan's parents, consumed by their own grief and oblivious to the mirror's influence, failed to see the change in their son. His eyes, once bright and curious, now held a haunted look, and his laughter had ceased, replaced by a silence that was heavy with unspoken fears. The mirror's power grew, its hold on Ethan strengthening with each passing day. The clown's world, a labyrinthine nightmare of twisted reflections and endless corridors, began to bleed into Ethan's reality. He would find himself lost in its maze, the clown's laughter echoing off the walls, a sound both enticing and repulsive. As the barrier between the two worlds thinned, Ethan realized the true nature of the clown's intentions. It sought to trap him within the mirror, to take his place in the world of the living. The realization struck him with a terror so profound it threatened to shatter his mind. In a final, desperate attempt to break free from the mirror's grasp, Ethan confronted the clown. The room trembled, the air thickened, and the mirror's surface rippled like the surface of a dark, ominous sea. The clown, its smile now a gaping maw of darkness, reached out for Ethan, its fingers elongating into twisted shadows. With a courage born of desperation, Ethan shattered the mirror with a heavy object. The glass exploded into a million shards, each piece reflecting the clown's distorted visage as it screamed in rage and agony. The house fell silent, the air clearing as if a suffocating veil had been lifted. Ethan, trembling and exhausted, collapsed to the floor, his heart pounding in his chest. In the aftermath, the house returned to a semblance of normalcy, but the scars of the ordeal remained. Ethan, forever changed, carried the burden of his encounter with the sinister clown in the mirror. His eyes, once innocent, now held a depth of understanding that was beyond his years. The town of Willow's End continued its quiet existence, unaware of the darkness that had lurked within one of its homes. But in the night, when the world was still and silent, one could almost hear the faint, haunting echo of a clown's laughter, a chilling reminder of the mirror's malevolent legacy. And in the attic of the old Victorian house, hidden among forgotten relics and dusty memories, lay the shattered remains of the antique mirror, its fragments still holding a sliver of the nightmare that had once threatened to consume a young boy's soul.